March Madness handicapping, and we're joined by special guest, form legend Sam Clayton.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You know, I don't know if these cameras are lying at all, but if you look younger than me, in real life, that's not, you just, maybe just like 6 months.
An inch taller, too.
And just a little taller. All right, listen, and it's great to have you, Sam, in Vegas with us. We're going to do two videos. One, we're going to talk about general handicapping in March Madness. And in the second video, we're going to talk about specific teams in 2011 in the Big Ten, which is your specialty. So let's talk generally. What is the one, if I come to you as a young handicapper that's lost my bankroll and I say, what is the one rule I can't break in March, what would you say?
Unders and underdogs. Every single time. You have to really look at unders and underdogs. I told you before we went on here, when I see a dog 1, 2, 3, 4 range, I really, really have to like that favorite to flip my script and take the favorite. I just think that it's anybody's court to win over.
All right, so let's talk about that because we talked about that before the show. Neutral court, most of the time the crowd's going to be neutral. And it's funny because there's tickets. I've been to these tournaments. There's tickets. There's 4 teams on the tickets. You've got in most of the games, you've got fans of the other team of games that aren't even being played right now. And the question is, who are they going to root for? And you're saying the underdog has the advantage in those spots.
Well, they can. I point to a game, Northern Iowa, Kansas last season in the second round. Northern Iowa was a 9, Kansas was a 1. And I don't think anybody in that crowd bet Northern Iowa. I don't think that is a far-off statement. But however, when Farouk Manesh and Cook and them were hitting three-pointers, that crowd was up for grabs. And Farouk Manesh hit that 3 just under a minute. That was a purple crowd. That was a Northern Iowa crowd. The dog took over the arena. And that happens in March when these underdogs come in because people like favorites and overs. Everybody knows that. But when time comes, when an underdog, a good team, a chippy team, a scrappy team takes over, people like that because most of us are underdogs.
All right. Our little psychology from Sam.
Yeah, 101.
All right. So what I'm hearing you say is one of the reasons you like dogs and unders is because on a neutral court, the crowd's going to be inclined towards the dog. It's not always going to pan out that way. That's going to be their inclination. What's the second reason?
Well, you know, I think there's a little bit more room for error when you have a favorite laying 6, 7, 8 points. You know, at home, when a favorite gets up by 6, 7, or 8, that's when the fans get into it. You know, the Orange Crush, the Izzone, the Rock Chalks in Kansas, they get into it, and that just completely can drain an underdog. But on a neutral court, like you mentioned, you have 4 crowds split up uniquely, and then you have the casual people that just love basketball. So the motivational edge for a crowd to all align behind one team, I don't think is as great as a true home game.
So you're saying that the momentum factor that can happen with a bigger home favorite, they get up by 8 and they just all of a sudden they're up by 18.
It's electric then, absolutely.
It's not going to happen because if the favorite is up, the crowd's probably not going to be behind them on this neutral anyway. So you're saying that the runaway games happen a lot less.
I think so. And you look at 2 teams, you look at a possible third round now. They call it the third round. I don't know why. But when Ohio State plays Kentucky, if that does happen and they win out, you have the 1 and the 4. We don't see this matchup during the regular season. We don't see that in December, January, and February. So when it comes around, it's a little bit more of a different matchup. It's 2 completely different styles of play. And the fact that a team like Kentucky, who likes to run and really speed the game up, plays high-flying basketball, Terrence Jones, Brandon Knight, that's exciting. And it's not hard for a crowd to get behind a big alley-oop, and that's what Kentucky does. So that's an angle that could work as well.
So this is a concept that I've been talking about a good bit, is the idea that you got teams that aren't even normally lined that play. You've got matchups between conferences you don't usually see. Typically, I think the analogy would be a bowl game in college football, is you got that same scenario, teams playing each other that typically aren't. And usually that's a more sophisticated handicap. How's the triple option going to do against, you know, the the 3-4 defense? How do you handicap? Do you look at it as, because let's be honest, when San Diego State plays BYU and it's the 3rd time they're playing, you've got a good idea what's going to happen.
Right.
Steelers play the Browns the 2nd time, you got a good idea what's going to happen. How do you handicap these matchups that you rarely see?
Well, you retweeted it. I posted it on the pregame forums, my categorical system. I take 6 things: upper-class point guard, preferably a senior point guard, a big man that scores 12 or more a game. You want variety. You don't want a guy like Jimmer Fredette. You don't want to ride them at the window because he's the only guy they have.
All right, so let's talk about these 6 factors real quick. Give us the rundown.
Well, we've got senior point guard. a big man averaging 12 points or more, a 10-point differential, meaning if you score 80, you want sub 70, 75 points a game. No champion has ever won scoring less than 75 a game. Allowing 62 or less, able to control pace, and then 4 or more upper-class starters, which you would be surprised not many of these teams have.
By the way, if you have the 75 and you have the 62, you don't need the you could go down to a big 5.
Absolutely, yeah. It's funny, though, you bring that up with this system. People say, oh, well, here's another system. Here's another math nut trying to get it right. The past 3 seasons, only teams with 5 out of 6 or more have won it all. And I've got 4 teams, Gonzaga, Kansas, ND, and OSU. We'll talk more about teams later on, but that's pretty telling there that only 4 teams meet the criteria that I've had pretty good success with.
That they've had 5 out of 6 of the criteria
of my categories, yes.
Okay, so let's think about this a second then. Let's go back through them one more time and just spend about 30 seconds on each one explaining why this is pertinent in the tournaments.
Well, I think in the tournaments, you look at Gonzaga, a team that starts 4 seniors. A senior point guard in Dimitri Woodson. Sakurai's a big guy. Stephen Gray scores.
So senior backcourt, why is that important? Let me guess here. Is you're in unfamiliar territory, high pressure, you need someone that can handle the ball.
He answered it for me.
All right. So the next one is a big man that scores more than 12 points.
Right, because if you're a perimeter team like a BYU team is, they don't really have that big inside player. They have Hartsock down there, but even he is a perimeter player. If the shots aren't falling and you don't have a big man, you are in trouble.
Because nerves, oftentimes it affects that. You don't get nervous on dunks, right? Yeah. And number 2, the shooting background in these arenas is a challenge for a lot of outside shooting teams.
Our last couple of champions won because they were able to work from the inside out, able to establish the paint, get a piece of the paint, and then when the defense collapses, that opens up the floodgates on the outside and the perimeter. But if you start on the outside, it's a lot harder to establish that.
You know, it feels paradoxical because the first one is about the backcourt, but we're not saying we need backcourt scoring,
right,
or that we need outside shooting. We just need someone that can control the game at the guard position.
Right. Get into the lane, attack the lane, open up lanes. You don't need to be a good shooting backcourt because there are a lot of good shooting backcourts. But you need to know when to take the shot, where to take the shot, and then when to dump it down low.
All right. I agree with that. Now, what's the third one?
Was the pace of the game. I like a team like Wisconsin because they're able to slow things down. They have a first-round
What's
matchup.
the metric around that?
The 62 points or less.
All right. So now let's say, so you're saying that is that a sign of pace or is that a sign of good defense?
Well, it could be a little bit of both. You know, Old Dominion has 58, but they play Pittsburgh-style basketball. You know, they play that, you know, they want to score 55 a game. And, you know, it could be a pacing. It could be a little bit of both, but I think that the best teams that are controlling pace are also good defensive teams. So I think they're correlated a little bit.
And the reason that's more applicable in the tournaments is, again, the unfamiliarity and the nerves.
And it's harder to speed a game up than it is to slow one down. That's a proven fact. It's harder for a team like Belmont to get out and score 80 in a tournament because other teams are trying to slow it down. It's easier to speed a game up than it is to really slow it down.
Okay.
I think I just contradicted myself. It's easier to slow a game down than it is to speed one up.
Okay.
You gave me that look like, wait, what?
All right. And next?
That was it. That was the main 3.
So you were talking about the 75 points a game?
Yeah, 75 points a game.
And what's the rationale behind that?
That was just that no champions ever won with under 75 points a game. And that's a key. I think 75 is a good number, a good round number. That was the one that I plugged in.
Scoring is going to be more difficult. So if you can't score in the regular season, you're going to have trouble scoring here.
Right. Like I don't see a team like Temple going far because of their inability to fill it up.
Okay, interesting. All right, now we're 9 minutes in. Any closing thoughts we haven't touched on in general? Because we'll be talking specific teams later.
You know, I just think you have to look for the right dog in the right spot. 5.5 is my key number. I would not be laying any favorite from the 4.5, 5.5 range, just off of my own principles. And I think any short team, we mentioned a couple earlier that opened at -1, -2, like the dog.
So it's not, okay, interesting. So you're saying that, are you, amongst all the bets that you're going to make on the side this year, most likely, what percent, let's break it up. What percentage are going to be double-digit dogs? What percentage single-digit? What percentage favorites? I mean, just, wow, you know.
70% dogs.
Okay, and amongst those, how many double digits?
Probably 20.
20%?
Yeah.
So you're saying really small dogs that have a chance to win the game
are half my bets, yes.
Is your favorite.
Yep.
Okay. Now when you lay, you don't like to lay 4.5s where you like to stop laying?
I like to lay, I call it my danger zone. 6, 7, 8, 9 is my favorite to lay.
Oh, so that's weird because usually people's likes are in a spectrum that range from, let's say, small dogs to small favorites. You're saying you like small dogs, then you skip that whole middle
I skip
section.
that whole beat.
And then you take the bigger favorite. Now, why is that?
I just think that, like I said, I call it the danger zone. I think that a team, when you lay 13, you have to be up 15, 16, 17 for the majority of the game. If you're laying 6, 7, 8, you're up by 10, you're sitting pretty. That's just the way I've done it. Everybody's got their own styles.
No, I'm trying to understand. I'm not questioning it. I'm trying to understand it.
It's just a little bit of a different script, I know.
Because I personally don't mind laying, I don't like laying 6, 7, or 8 because my theory is, especially 7 and 8, is if it goes to overtime, you're going to win a vast majority of the time a +8, right, if you got the dog,
right.
And thus you're going to lose if you got the favorite. At +4 and it goes into overtime, you probably only win as a dog at +4 60% of the time, because even if there's 20 seconds left and it's a 2-point game, it can get to 4, 5, 6. But then at 7 or 8, that's interesting. But I think what you're saying is that for you to be willing to lay that many points, you're expecting to be up double digits late.
Right, and I don't play many double-digit games at all.
I'm
never comfortable, never, ever.
All right, good stuff. All right, it's your turn to continue the conversation in the comment section. And next up, we're going to be talking about specific teams in this year's tournament.